Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my beloved brothers and sisters. Today, I want to take you to a beautiful moment in the life of one of the greatest prophets, Musa alayhi salam. A moment not of victory or power, but a moment of weakness. A moment when he had nothing. He was tired. He was hungry. He had no place to stay. He had just fled from Egypt after unintentionally taking a life. His clothes were dusty. His feet were sore. And yet, at that very moment he made a dua, a supplication, so powerful, so sincere, so humble, that Allah changed his life completely. Allah mentions in Surah Al-Qasas, verse 24, Rabba inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin fakir. My Lord, I am in desperate need of whatever good you might send down to me. That's it. Just 8 words in Arabic. But what came next? A home, a job, a righteous spouse, a new beginning. The story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam at the well in Madian is one of the most profound moments of his life and offers deep spiritual and practical lessons for us all. Before this moment, Musa had grown up in the palace of Pharaoh, surrounded by luxury, influence and authority. He had a sense of justice and cared deeply for the oppressed, particularly his people, the Banu Israel. But after unintentionally killing a man while trying to defend a fellow Israelite, Musa found himself in serious trouble. Pharaoh wanted him arrested, or worse. So, in fear for his life, he fled Egypt with nothing, no money, no home, no companions, no food, just his faith in Allah and a heart full of uncertainty. Musa journeyed across the desert, alone, exhausted and unsure of where his next step would take him. He traveled to the land of Madian, not knowing what would happen. Think about this. A man who was once a prince now became a fugitive. He went from a life of privilege to a life of survival. But Allah was with him. Every step Musa took, though he didn't know it at the time, was being guided by divine wisdom. Allah was preparing him, shaping him, training him, because great missions require great patience and resilience. When Musa finally arrived at the outskirts of Madian, he sat down by a well. He was physically drained, emotionally exhausted and completely alone in a foreign land. Yet even in that state he did not lose his character. He didn't curse his fate. He didn't complain. He stayed alert and observant. At the well he noticed a group of men watering their flocks. Off to the side he saw 2 young women struggling to manage their sheep, waiting for the crowd to clear. Instead of ignoring them, Musa immediately took action. Despite his own weakness, he stood up and helped them water their flock. He didn't ask for anything in return. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't even linger for conversation. He did a good deed for the sake of Allah and then walked away. After helping them, he went back under the shade of a tree and, in that moment of solitude and brokenness, he turned to Allah. And he made one of the most beautiful du'as in the Quran. Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin fakir. My Lord, indeed I am, for whatever good you might send down to me, in desperate need. This short, sincere dua captures so much. First, it shows us the humility of Musa He openly admits to Allah that he is fakir, utterly needy. He doesn't make demands. He doesn't even specify what kind of help he wants. He simply lays his heart bare and says, Ya Allah, I'm in need of anything good that you send. This is real tawakkul, true reliance on Allah. It is not just believing that Allah can help you, but acknowledging that only Allah can help you, especially when you're in a situation no one else understands or can fix. And this is what makes the story so powerful. Musa had nothing, yet he still had Allah. And that was enough. It's important for us to reflect on this moment in our own lives. Many times, we go through periods of confusion, where nothing seems to be going right. Maybe we lose our job. Maybe we face heartbreak. Maybe we feel lost, far from our goals, uncertain of the path ahead. And in those moments, Shaitan tries to convince us that we are alone, that we're abandoned. But Allah reminds us through Musa's story, even when you have nothing, you have everything if you have Allah. When Musa made that dua, he didn't see immediate results in the material sense, but what followed was miraculous. Allah was not ignoring him. In fact, the response to his dua was already in motion. The 2 young women returned shortly after and invited him to meet their father, Prophet Shu'aib. That meeting led to a job. It led to a place to stay. It led to a marriage. It led to stability and peace after years of chaos. The context of this dua is more than just a historical detail. It's a spiritual map for anyone feeling lost, overwhelmed, or hopeless. It teaches us that even when the world turns its back on you, When your status has crumbled and your plans fall apart, turning to Allah with sincerity is not a small thing, it's everything. And that one heartfelt prayer, uttered under a tree by a tired and lonely man, changed his entire life. The dua that Prophet Musa alayhi salam made at the well in Madian is not only short and beautiful, but filled with depth, power and wisdom. In Arabic it is just 8 words. Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin fakir. This is found in Surah Al-Qasas, verse 24. And it translates to, My Lord, indeed I am, for whatever good you would send down to me, in desperate need. It is a supplication that encapsulates absolute dependence on Allah, genuine humility, and a heart completely surrendered to its Creator. When we look at the structure of this dua, we begin with Rabbi, my Lord. It's personal. It's not just, O Lord, but my Lord. Musa as was speaking directly to Allah with closeness, with intimacy. This one word already tells us the nature of the relationship between the slave and the master. Even though Musa as was in a foreign land with no home, no food, and no support, he still had a personal connection with his Lord, and that gave him the strength to carry on. Then comes inni, indeed I. Musa as affirms himself. He's not making a casual request, he's making a declaration. He's standing before Allah and stating a fact about himself with certainty and vulnerability. He is opening up, exposing his inner state. This is not just about saying words, it's about meaning every word. Next comes lima anzalta ilayya min khairin, for whatever good you might send to me. Here lies a deep level of adab, manners in dua. Musa doesn't ask for something specific. He doesn't say, Oh Allah, give me food or give me a place to sleep or grant me a wife. No, he simply says, any good you send my way, I'm ready for it, I'm in need of it. This shows his trust in Allah's knowledge and wisdom. Sometimes we want something, but Allah knows what we truly need. Musa teaches us to be open to all forms of care, goodness that Allah might provide, be it physical sustenance, emotional peace, companionship, or long-term guidance. And finally he says, Fakir, I am in desperate need. This word is not just a description, it's an admission, it's an act of humility. It comes from the root word that means poverty or deficiency. When someone calls themselves fakir, they're saying, I have nothing, I am empty, I'm broken, I have no resources except what you give me. This is the spiritual state that opens the doors of divine mercy. The more we realize our neediness before Allah, the more we invite His help and blessings. This entire dua, though simple in wording, is heavy in meaning. It shows us how a true believer approaches Allah, not with entitlement, not with demands, but with humility, trust and sincerity. The dua is so beautiful because it's not a list of wants. It's a surrender to the one who knows what you need better than you do. Many times when we make dua, we become obsessed with specifics. Oh Allah, give me this job. Oh Allah, let me marry this person. Oh Allah, make this plan succeed. But sometimes the very thing we want is not what we need. Musa teaches us the wisdom of leaving the decision to Allah. He simply says, Ya Allah, whatever you send my way, I need it. This is the essence of tawakkul, of trusting Allah's plan. It is the heart saying, I don't know what's best for me, but you do, and I rely on you. It's about acknowledging that we don't have control, and that control lies solely with our Rabb. And look at the beauty of it. After making this dua, Allah didn't just give him one thing. He gave him 3 major life blessings, a wife, a job, and a home. All from one sincere, humble plea. For anyone struggling in life, feeling lost or uncertain, this dua is a powerful reminder. You don't need long, complicated words to reach Allah. What you need is a heart that feels its dependence on Him, a tongue that is sincere, and trust that whatever He gives is good. This 8-word dua is a timeless example of how simplicity in language can still carry the weight of deep faith and bring about profound change. If you find yourself in a situation where you don't know what to ask for anymore, or you feel overwhelmed by your needs, just remember this dua. Recite it with meaning, understand it, feel it, live it, and know that when you call upon your Lord like Musa did, Allah hears you, sees you, and already knows the goodness that's coming your way. When Prophet Musa alayhi salam made his dua under the shade of that tree in Madian, what made it so powerful wasn't the number of words or the length of the supplication. What made it truly impactful was the depth of sincerity and the strength of his tawakkul, his complete and unwavering trust in Allah. Musa was in a position that many of us can relate to. He was exhausted, emotionally drained, and uncertain about what would come next. He had no visible resources, no allies, and no clear plan. But he had one thing, his connection with Allah, and that was enough. Sincerity in dua is something we often underestimate. It's not about eloquence. It's not about speaking perfect Arabic or having the longest list of requests. True sincerity comes from the heart. It's about standing in front of your Creator with nothing but your need and your faith. When Musa said, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin fakir, my Lord, indeed I am, for whatever good you might send down to me in desperate need, he wasn't just saying words, he was pouring his heart out. He was acknowledging his complete dependence on Allah and letting go of every illusion of control. That moment was not just a prayer, it was an act of surrender. Tawakkul or trust in Allah is not about being passive. It doesn't mean we sit and do nothing, hoping that Allah will sort out our lives without any effort from us. Musa didn't just make dua and lie down. He had already helped the two women at the well. He had done a good deed despite being in need himself. Then, after that effort, he turned to Allah. This shows the balance between effort and trust. You do what you can, and then you hand the rest over to the one who controls all outcomes. What makes this moment so profound is that Musa had every reason to feel lost or even frustrated. He had just left Egypt, running for his life. He had given up a life of royalty and now found himself a stranger in a foreign land. It would have been easy for someone in his shoes to question everything. Why me? I tried to stand for justice, and look what happened. But instead of complaining, Musa turned to Allah with humility and hope. He didn't ask, why did this happen to me? He asked, Oh Allah, whatever you send to me, I'm ready because I am in need of it. This kind of sincerity requires faith. It requires trust that Allah sees the full picture even when you can't. When we talk about tawakkul today, it sometimes gets reduced to theory. But tawakkul is a lived experience. It's that moment when you apply for jobs and nothing comes back, but you still raise your hands in dua. It's when your plans keep failing, but you still believe that Allah has something better for you. It's when you do your part with full effort and then tell your heart, Allah will take care of the rest. Musa teaches us that true tawakkul doesn't need guarantees, it just needs Allah. There's another powerful aspect to this moment. Despite having no worldly support, Musa didn't allow his hardship to harden his heart. He stayed soft, he stayed helpful, he stayed grateful. He helped those women not because he expected something in return, but because that's who he was, a man of integrity, shaped by the values Allah had placed in him. That sincerity in action, followed by sincerity in dua, created a ripple of divine response. This is the key. Sincerity in the heart opens the doors of mercy from the heavens. In our own lives, we often feel like we need to be in a perfect state before making dua. But the story of Musa shows the opposite. He was dusty, tired, homeless, hungry, and emotionally burdened. Yet, that's when he made one of the most sincere du'as of his life. Allah doesn't expect perfection from us. He expects sincerity, and He responds to that sincerity with His infinite mercy. So, if you are going through something difficult right now, whether it's loneliness, financial struggle, emotional stress, or uncertainty about your future, take a lesson from Musa. Don't wait until everything is sorted out to speak to Allah. Speak to Him now, as you are, in the middle of the storm, with your weaknesses, with your fears, with your pain. That's when your dua is most powerful. One short, sincere prayer from a place of brokenness, with full trust in Allah, can change your life in ways you never imagined. Just like it did for Prophet Musa, it can lead to unexpected kindness, divine solutions, and a path filled with blessings, because when the heart is sincere and the trust in Allah is strong, the help of Allah is never far. The moment Prophet Musa ﷺ made his heartfelt dua at the well in Madian, something beautiful began to unfold. He had just finished helping the two young women draw water for their flocks, and though he was physically tired and emotionally worn out, he did not expect anything in return. After stepping back under the shade of a tree, he raised his hands, or perhaps only his heart, and said, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin fakir. My Lord, I am in desperate need of whatever good you would send down to me. In that moment of weakness, complete humility, and total trust in Allah, a door from the unseen was about to be opened. What happened next is remarkable. Allah did not leave Musa as is in his desperation. He did not make him wait endlessly. Almost immediately, one of the two girls returned to him. She came walking modestly, and she had a message. My father would like to reward you for helping us. This one sentence was the beginning of a whole new chapter in Musa's life. From that one sincere dua, a chain of blessings began to descend. one after the other. This wasn't just a response, this was a divine arrangement already prepared for him. Allah had already planned everything. The dua was just the key to unlock it. When Musa arrived at the home of Prophet Shu'aib, according to many scholars, he was not only welcomed with warmth, but also given a chance to speak and be heard. He shared his story, his fears, and what had happened in Egypt. And what did Shu'aib say? He comforted him. He told him not to worry. You have escaped from the wrongdoing people. Imagine how relieving those words must have felt to Musa to finally hear someone say, "You're safe now. You're okay." Allah didn't just respond to his need for provision, He responded to his emotional need for peace and safety too. But it didn't stop there. One of the daughters advised her father that Musa would make a great employee, strong and trustworthy. Based on that, Shu'aib offered him a job tending to the flocks. A job meant stability, dignity, and the chance to build a new life. Again, all of this came directly after that 8-word dua. Then came the third blessing. Shu'aib offered his daughter to Musa in marriage. Not only did Musa find work and shelter, but he also found a righteous spouse, someone who had haya, modesty, wisdom, and good character. So in a very short time, Prophet Musa has been given a home, a job, and a wife. What more could a man in his situation ask for? All of this teaches us something deeply important about the way Allah responds to the prayers of His servants. When we turn to Allah with sincerity and humility, He responds in ways we could never have planned. Sometimes the response is immediate, like it was for Musa. Other times, it is delayed for our benefit. But rest assured, a sincere dua is never ignored. Allah either gives us what we ask for, protects us from something harmful, or gives us something better, often when we least expect it. Another lesson here is that Allah's response comes through means we might not anticipate. Who would have thought that helping 2 strangers at a well would be the reason Musa would be invited into a family, given work, and offered marriage? We often look for answers in direct forms. More money, a phone call, a solution appearing out of nowhere. But Allah's help sometimes comes through people, opportunities, or circumstances that look ordinary. This is why we must do good wherever we can, even when we are the ones in need. Musa was tired, yet he helped someone else. That small act, done sincerely, opened the doors to his own blessings. So many people today feel like their du'as are not being answered. But the question to ask is, are we making dua like Musa's? Are we sincere, humble, and trusting that Allah's plan is always better than ours? Are we patient enough to wait for Allah's timing? And are we open to receiving His help through unexpected channels? The story of how Allah responded to Musa's dua is not just a tale from the past. It is a blueprint for our own lives. If you are struggling, if you are unsure about your future, then learn from Musa. Do what you can, help others, even when you are the one in need. Then, raise your hands, or just your heart, and say, "My Lord, I am in desperate need of whatever good you send." And believe, truly believe, that the response from Allah might be closer than you think. Because with Allah, no cry for help is ever ignored, and no sincere prayer ever goes unanswered. One of the most powerful tools that Allah has given to the believer is dua. It is not simply a set of words we recite. It is not a ritual. It is a lifeline. It is our direct and personal connection to the one who controls the heavens and the earth. In the story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, we are shown just how life-changing a sincere dua can be. At his lowest point, physically alone, emotionally exhausted, without food or shelter, Musa called upon Allah, and from that moment everything changed. His dua was his strength. His dua was his turning point. And that teaches us that dua is not just for when things go wrong, it's for every stage of our journey. But it is especially our weapon during times of hardship. Musa didn't have anyone to turn to. He had no family with him, no wealth, no contacts in Madian, and no support system. Yet what he had was far more powerful than all of that. He had his relationship with Allah. When he said, "Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin fakir," he was doing what every believer must do when backed into a corner. He was using the weapon of dua. The beauty of Islam is that it teaches us that no matter how far we've fallen, how weak we feel, or how little we possess, we are never powerless as long as we can raise our hands and call upon our Lord. Dua is the believer's shield in times of fear, the believer's hope in times of despair, and the believer's request in times of need. The Prophet Muhammad said that dua is the weapon of the believer, and Musa has proved that. A single dua turned his life around. But why is dua so powerful? Because when we make dua, we are acknowledging our own weakness and declaring our trust in Allah's strength. It's an act of worship in itself, because it affirms Tawheed. It affirms that only Allah can give, only Allah can rescue, only Allah can open doors. That's why dua is never wasted. In Musa's case, his dua was sincere, humble, and made with full dependence. He didn't ask for something specific, but simply admitted his need for any good that Allah would send. This in itself is an incredible example for us. Sometimes we get stuck on the idea that our dua needs to be perfect or detailed. But Allah knows what's in our hearts even before we speak. He knows what is best for us even when we don't. That's why dua should not be seen as a transaction. It's not about reciting a certain number of words and expecting a guaranteed result. It's about building a relationship with Allah, trusting in His wisdom, and surrendering your needs to Him in full faith. Another powerful lesson from Musa's story is that dua is not something we reserve for the prayer mat alone. He made this dua sitting in the open, under the shade of a tree, in a moment of raw vulnerability. That means you can speak to Allah anywhere, anytime. You don't need fancy words. You don't need to be in a perfect state. All you need is sincerity. Talk to Allah when you're driving, when you're walking, when you're alone at night, or when you feel overwhelmed in a crowd. Allah is never distant from those who sincerely call upon Him. Many people today feel anxious about their future, whether it's about marriage, their career, money, or inner peace, and they ask, what can I do? The answer begins with, start making dua. Don't underestimate it. Don't think your problems are too big or too small. The same Lord who responded to Musa as is in the desert, without a home, without support, without resources, He is the same Lord who is waiting for you to turn to Him now. If you feel weak, use dua. If you feel lost, use dua. If you are hopeful for something good, ask for it through dua. Allah loves it when His servant turns to Him and keeps turning to Him. There's also wisdom in how dua teaches us patience. Sometimes the response is immediate, as it was for Musa Azaz. Other times, Allah delays the response because He is preparing something better, or because the timing isn't right, or because we are being tested in our faith. But every dua is heard. No dua is ignored. Sometimes you may not even realize the blessing you received was a result of a dua you made months or even years earlier. So keep asking, even when you see no sign. Keep calling out, even when you feel unheard, because Allah never turns away a sincere caller. The example of Musa as at the well shows us that one sincere moment of turning to Allah can rewrite your entire life. From homelessness to stability, from loneliness to companionship, from fear to peace, everything can change with a heartfelt dua. So let us remember that while the world may place limits on us, our dua goes beyond limits. With it, we are never truly alone, and we are never without hope. As long as we can raise our hearts to the heavens, we hold in our hands the most powerful weapon a believer can possess. When Prophet Musa alayhi salam made the heartfelt dua at the well in Madian, there was something deeply profound in the way he spoke to Allah. He said, Rabbi inni lima anzalta ilayya min khairin fakir. What stands out here is the word fakir, a word that means someone who is desperately in need, someone who is utterly poor and dependent. Musa, as a man who once lived in the palace of Pharaoh, now calls himself a fakir before his Lord. This is not a weakness. This is the height of strength in the eyes of Allah. Because in Islam, true power does not lie in pretending to be self-sufficient. It lies in knowing who truly holds control over everything, and turning to Him in full recognition of your own limits. Modern life often teaches us the opposite. Society tells us to be strong, to be independent, to hide our struggles, and to act like we've got it all together. But Islam teaches us a different kind of strength. It teaches us that admitting your need before Allah is not humiliation, it's liberation. It's a declaration that you're no longer trying to carry the burden of life alone. You're handing it over to the one whose power knows no limits. This is what Prophet Musa did. He didn't try to mask his situation. He didn't say, I'll figure it out on my own. He said, in essence, Ya Allah, I have nothing. I need you. This is such a powerful mindset to internalize. When you come before Allah in prayer, you are not expected to be perfect. You are expected to be real. When you admit your weakness, your brokenness, your uncertainty, that's when your heart opens wide for divine mercy. That's when Allah steps in and provides in ways you could never imagine. Allah loves it when His servants come to Him humbly. The Quran says that Allah does not love the arrogant or the proud. but He is close to those who are humble, who cry to Him, who admit their flaws and seek His help sincerely. Musa Aziz had every reason to feel defeated. He had just escaped from Egypt, where he was being hunted. He had no shelter, no food, and no clear destination. But even in that state, he didn't let pride get in the way of his connection with Allah. He admitted, "I'm needy for any good you send." This shows us that the first step to receiving help from Allah is to acknowledge that you need it. You can't receive what you don't admit you lack. That's why dua is so much more than asking. It's confessing. It's opening your heart and saying, "Ya Allah, I don't have it in me." But you do. This humility is not weakness. It is the strongest position a believer can be in. Because once you stop pretending to be in control, and once you surrender to Allah's control, you find peace. You're no longer fighting alone. You're no longer trying to figure out everything by yourself. You've handed your concerns over to the one who never sleeps, who never forgets, and who never fails. This is the secret of spiritual strength in Islam. One of the names of Allah is Al-Ghani, the one who is free of all need, and He calls us Al-Fukara, those who are always in need of Him. This is our natural state. The problem is, many people try to escape this reality. They want to believe they are independent, powerful, self-made. But life has a way of humbling all of us. We face loss, illness, rejection, failure, and that's when we are reminded that we were never meant to carry everything alone. Those moments are not signs of failure. They are invitations from Allah to turn back to Him, just like Musa as did. In fact, some of the most beloved people to Allah were those who spent their nights in tears and their days in patience. Prophet Muhammad, the most perfect human being to ever walk the earth, would stand in prayer for so long that his feet would swell. Why? Because even he, the final messenger, showed us the path. Admit your need to Allah, and that's where you'll find your strength. When Musa called himself Fakir, he wasn't diminishing himself. He was elevating his status in the sight of Allah. Because those who humble themselves before Allah are raised in rank. Those who ask from Him sincerely are never turned away. This is the secret. The more you realize you are nothing without Allah, the more Allah fills your life with meaning, strength, and purpose. So if you ever feel broken, lost, or unsure, remember Musa as. Don't be ashamed to admit you're struggling. Don't be afraid to call yourself a fakir in front of your Rabb, because that moment of humility might be the very moment that your life begins to turn around. When you show Allah your weakness, He responds with His strength. And there is no strength greater than the strength that comes from Him. The story of Prophet Musa alayhi salam, making that simple yet heartfelt dua in Madian, is not just a beautiful incident in history. It is a timeless message for all believers. It teaches us something so simple, yet often neglected in our fast-paced lives. When you're in need, when you're lost, when you're confused about your next step, call upon Allah immediately. Don't delay it. Don't wait for the right time or the perfect moment. Call upon Him in that exact moment of weakness, fear, or uncertainty. Because that is when your heart is most honest, and your connection to your Lord is the strongest. One of the most practical lessons we learn from Musa is that dua does not require a perfect setting. He wasn't in a mosque, he wasn't in a state of formal prayer, and he didn't have his hands lifted high. He was a traveler, a fugitive, hungry and tired, sitting under the shade of a tree in a foreign land. And yet, from that place of complete vulnerability, he made one of the most powerful du'as in the Quran. This tells us that Allah listens anytime, anywhere. The moment you turn to Him with sincerity, He is near. Many people today think they need to wait until they are ready to connect with Allah. They think they need to become more religious first, or that their sins have made them unworthy of speaking to their Creator. But the story of Musa destroys that illusion. It shows us that you turn to Allah not because you are perfect, but because you are in need. In fact, the more broken you feel, the more desperate you are for guidance or relief, the more powerful your dua becomes. Allah is not looking for perfection in our voices. He is looking for sincerity in our hearts. Another practical point to reflect on is that Musa made this dua without knowing what would come next. He didn't know that one of the women would return. He didn't know he was about to meet a prophet. He didn't know he would get a job, a home, and a wife. But he made the dua anyway. And this is a reminder for all of us. You don't need to see the full path before you ask Allah to guide your next step. Just ask. Just talk to Him. Just open your heart. Even if you don't see how your problem could possibly be solved, Allah does. Even if you feel like nothing is working out, Allah is already preparing something better. We live in a world where people often rely on plans, strategies, and connections. While taking action and planning is encouraged in Islam, what we often forget is the spiritual foundation of all success. Turning to Allah before, during, and after every step. Make it a habit to start your day with dua. Before any important meeting, make dua. Before making a decision, big or small, make dua. Don't limit dua to times of crisis. Let it be your constant companion. Let your heart learn to turn to Allah not only in pain, but also in peace. Musa's dua also teaches us that we don't always need to make elaborate requests. Sometimes all we need is to say, Ya Allah, whatever good you send to me, I need it. That one sentence carries within it so much humility and openness. It says, I trust you to choose what is best for me. That is real tawakkul. It's not just saying I believe in Allah. It's living your life in a way that reflects that belief, by handing over your hopes, fears, and plans to Him. Even if life feels chaotic right now, even if nothing seems to make sense, even if you're carrying wounds that nobody sees, don't give up on dua. Keep calling, keep whispering. Even if all you can say is, Ya Allah, help me, say it. Don't underestimate the power of simple, sincere words. One dua can move mountains, one dua can change hearts, one dua can open doors that were sealed shut. Musa didn't ask for much, he just admitted his need, and Allah responded with a house, a job, a family, and peace. You don't need to know how Allah will answer. You just need to know that He will. And that certainty comes from trusting in His mercy, His knowledge, and His timing. So from today, make dua a natural part of your life. When you feel joy, express gratitude through dua. When you feel anxiety, relieve it through dua. When you're unsure about your future, seek clarity through dua. And when you feel completely helpless, remember that turning to Allah is never your last option. It is your first and greatest source of strength. The story of Musa shows us that even when you have nothing, if you have the ability to say, Ya Allah, you already have everything you need to begin again.